Welcome to the CMO Chapter podcast, where we dive deep into the dynamic world of Chief Marketing Officers. Join us as we explore the careers, insights, and strategies of top marketing executives who shape the brands we know and love. Whether you're a seasoned marketer, aspiring CMO, or simply just curious to understand what it really takes to step into the shoes of a CMO. This podcast is your backstage pass to discovering what it's like to really lead and innovate in the ever-evolving landscape of business. Stay tuned as we uncover the stories of the visionaries behind the brand. I am delighted this morning to welcome the one and only fabulous Louise Cummins. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you for being part of the CMO Chapters podcast. Yeah, we caught up, I think, maybe a bit more at the beginning of the year to obviously talk about this concept. And I was really excited to have you on because I think at that time as well, you'd sort of transitioned a little bit into the sort of ACAM sort of world as well in regards to the Australian Centre of AI, and we're going through a bit of a career transition. So we've got lots to unpack and to talk about. So I'm going to start by saying, Louise, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Louise Cummins. I'm one of the co-founders for the Australian Centre for AI and Marketing. And yes, I've had over 30 years experience in marketing, from telco to tech to entertainment to not-for-profit. So quite a broad range of roles, and probably last 10 years in that sort of more CMO role, as well as digital transformation.
Yeah, you've done a lot. So I was doing a little bit of my research behind the scenes, and you've really done all sorts, haven't you? I think I saw your first role was a pizza delivery driver.
I think I set up my LinkedIn when I was in Vegas for a conference. I was looking at it later, just going, I'm not sure why. Anyway, but you know.
No, I like it. We're all going to start from somewhere. So
Exactly.
good on you. I think it's great. And then you've been an author, I saw as well, and a film producer. So there's a lot there. So is it fair to say you've sort of got this a little bit of kind of entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah, I think they call it, and actually, it's something about being corporate entrepreneurials. It's like entrepreneurials. Have you heard of?
Okay.
I think it's something like that. So I think I've always been drawn to roles where there's an ability to be entrepreneurial. So whether
Mhm.
it's a big, transition, a disruptive technology, a organization that's going through a really big pivot, that's the sort of areas that get me excited and have drawn me to roles. So that's probably the through thread of all my roles versus different industries. But it's been fascinating in terms of when recruiters have talked to me, I think they've really struggled because often it's like, okay, if you're in a box, you're in FMCG or you're in telco or tech or entertainment. And what I've learned across my 30-year career is that it's the same premise. There really is very little difference. It's all about understanding the customer, understanding the principles of marketing, and just being able to deliver really good initiatives based around those two principles. So I'm one of those people that I feel like I've been energized being in different industries. And I feel as a result, I bring interesting, different perspectives to new roles because I've seen it in different industries.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're so right there as well, because obviously as a recruiter, I would love to, I feel like we're in a market certainly right now where it is quite, like for like. People are choosing specifically, background, because to a degree they can, because there's a lot of people looking. So I'm all for innovation and trying to, bring back, place people at least that are going to have new ideas, new initiatives, new perceptions, instead of regurgitating what they did at the same place, the same industry 5 years ago.
And it is interesting because I know we're going to talk a bit about AI, but it is interesting as more employers and recruiters leverage on AI, is if you're always looking at that 90% pattern, how do you actually make sure that you have outliers in the mix
Mhm.
that actually bring different perspectives. So it is an interesting sort of dilemma, I think, but potentially that if people don't fit the mold,
Mm.
I just want to make sure that they're not overlooked in the future.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let's go back a little bit. Why marketing? Like, have you always been drawn to marketing, or what was it that really thought, you know what, that's where I want to be?
Yeah, so I started my degree actually doing applied mathematics and education and psychology. And after year one, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I then realized that what was a particular career that could marry creativity with, to be honest with you, mathematics
Yeah,
and finance and economics and the psychology. So the first year into my degree, I then started a course in marketing. So by the time I finished my degree, I actually came out with two different qualifications, as well as a PR course as well. So that's kind of where it landed with me. And throughout my career, whilst I might have sort of thought, oh, should I pivot at different times? Marketing really has always landed with me because of that really beautiful mix between creativity and commercial.
yeah. And what about? I mean, what a credible career. Because I was, as I said, doing my research, and you have done a lot, and you've had that almost, that luxury I see where you've gone from so many different industries and you've taken learnings and then applied them, I'm sure, into, the next role and then the next role and evolved. And then I think, I saw January 25 was when you finished up at World Vision as CMO. It's a very big role. So had you always had your sights on getting to that? Like, had you always been quite driven and ambitious?
No, no, I didn't, to be honest with you. I think it's interesting, isn't it? So it's now interesting because people that I worked with that were marketing assistants and marketing managers when I was marketing assistant marketing managers, they're now at CMO level as well.
Yeah.
So they've sort of, it's really interesting. But at the time, I think you kind of just look at the next stage. It's not necessarily you look at that sort of bigger role. Yeah, so I think it's been more of a natural evolution than a strong intention that I always wanted to be a CMO.
Yeah. So we go back to CMO role, World Vision. I mean, how big, like at that point? I mean, it's such a large organization, a very complex organization as well. So, how big would your team would have been at that point, just to get an idea of scale?
It was over 65, but then part of my role also extended to being on the international marketing leadership team.
Oh,
So it was both the Australian business, but also having a governance perspective in that international marketing as well. So yes, big role, and also as an executive part of the executive team, I also had executive sponsorship responsibilities in different streams as well. So at the beginning of my tenure, I had executive sponsorship over the First Nations pillar as well as the climate initiative. So that was very exciting and
yeah.
interesting as well. So it was a very broad role.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. So, as a leader, I mean, it's you've got so many different elements there to sort of juggle. How are you driving innovation and I guess creativity at a scale, that big, or in a business that large? Because there's so much to tackle.
Look, I was very lucky because there was a real appetite by the business to actually drive and create change as well. So that's number one. Two, had an amazing team within my lead team that would also enable that. One of the biggest advocates was when I first arrived, I really worked with the CFO to make a real, because there were some challenges, big challenges. And so we worked really carefully together to actually build out models of how we were actually going to grow the business in a meaningful way and invest in marketing in the right way. So that was a big piece of what we did. The other thing that we did, something I do quite a lot, is really think about the 70-20-10 rule.
Okay.
So 70% is what can you do to do the best work you can do within this, your core area. Then it's 20%, which is sort of tangential but kind of aligned a bit. And then the 10% is out of the box thinking.
Oh,
So I think having a structure around how you're going to embed innovation is also really important, because otherwise everybody gets a bit lost in sort of doing too many different things, which unfortunately is something that's very, having done work in not-for-profits, I think it's the case with a lot of organizations. When there's a new idea, they just add it on top of
yeah,
the existing rather than take away things. But I find it's even more in a not-for-profit space, because it brings people with incredible heart that actually wants to keep doing more and more. And as a result, that amount keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and before you know it, everybody is kind of too tired.
yeah, yeah. I've certainly seen that myself. Absolutely, burnout occurs, I should say.
And especially when it's such a purpose-driven organization. So especially when you do know that it is, when people say it's not life or death, well, we were actually dealing with life or death
Yeah,
situations. So as a result, you kind of just want to keep doing more and more, which is fantastic. But sometimes doing more and more, you actually create less space to make impact. So that's the other thing, is how do you make sure that you're being meaningful with your marketing initiatives?
yeah. And I think it's really wise words there as well, because, back to, I think we spoke about this really briefly, like, prioritizing as well. Like, I've certainly learned those lessons along the way myself, no matter, not perhaps at the scale of World Vision, but certainly working smarter and not being burnt out, at least, as well. Um, is there something, I sort of look at you and I do admire you to some degree, because I feel like you're always evolving. And has there been times, like, in your career, where you've really identified that is a weakness for me, and I've really had to work hard at self development and really sort of learning? And I ask that question because I've spoken to a lot of CMOs since doing this podcast, and a lot talk about, oh God, for me to have a seat at the table, like, I was out of my depth when people were talking about data or tech. And, I luckily just threw loads of questions at this fabulous data analyst, and he was able to, or she was able to educate me and bring me up to speed. So have you ever had any of those moments?
I think that it would be naive to actually say, especially in this day and age. I mean, I'm a really big advocate for lifelong learning. So I've done a lot of different courses. And I think you have to, if you want to be a leader, I'm not saying, I'm not equating what I do to being a doctor, but doctors have to continually upskill every week. That's something that any profession should be doing. And unfortunately, we get so caught up in the doing that we don't actually give ourselves time to really invest in that L&D, or it's kind of on the bottom of the priority list. The other thing is that I think it can be quite daunting, especially in the tech space, for people sometimes to feel like they have the right to contribute, because what happens sometimes is you get lost in the jargon, the vernacular. Like, you'll have people that are very deeply technical. And I really admire when people go, I don't understand that,
Mm,
because we're marketing experts,
uh-huh.
and say the data science, or, especially what's happening in the AI at the moment. It's important that you actually say, I don't understand this. Teach me. And I think that shows authentic leadership, rather than just going, I'm just going to sort of fake it till you make it. So in my current role, I call myself AI curious. Like, I'm not an AI expert. I believe after 30 years, I can say that I've got marketing expertise, but AI, I don't. So,
Yeah.
and all tech is constantly changing. Every day there's a new development. So I think it's important to be authentic to what you know and you don't know, but at the same time, leaning into that education every week. And I block it out. So I've got in my diary, you talked about time management.
Yeah.
It's quite boring, but I will, because it is a bit of a thing that completely changed the way I work. I color code my whole week.
Mm.
So I have family colors, I've got health colors, I've got social colors, I've got learning colors, and
Yeah.
then I've got projects. And that sounds a little bit odd to some people, but then I can quite quickly go, is my colors balanced or are they not balanced?
Yeah.
And then I can rework that. So every week, on Sunday, I make sure I'm more intentional with my time, because especially having ADHD, I find it, and obviously that's a different journey, but it's something I've struggled with since I was very young, is unless I'm actually structured, I can actually kind of get a little bit sort of, oh, there's something very interesting there.
Yeah.
I have to kind of keep myself structured. So I've learned over time, this is kind of the key to my success.
So you've got a fabulous rainbow to look at almost. It's like trying to
Yes, yes, I'm looking at it right now. It's a bit, it can be also a bit daunting, but it's actually quite good to, and especially when you've got people in your team that actually help you put up. For me, it's also about putting up friendly
Yeah.
fences.
Yeah.
So my cousin Diane, who's a doctor, she first introduced me to the term friendly fences. And I just love it because it's also about how do you make sure that you put up the right boundaries so that when you're intentional with your week,
Mhm.
for example, if you're wanting to help out, and I'm always try and make myself available for people that want to be mentored or want advice, but that way I time block that. So it's kind of just going, okay, happy to sort of, give of my time, but I need to time block it a bit.
Yeah. I feel like I could take a couple of lessons from you on this, Louise.
I learned the hard way.
I want to ask, and I'm going to sort of tackle a little bit. We're going to talk about battle scars because we've all got battle scars to some degree. I mean, we'll sort of scale it back a bit. I mean, I look at your career, as I said, going back, you have done so much. Do you have any regrets? Is there anything there that you think, oh, coulda, shoulda, woulda, or
I think staying in environments, especially in my younger career, where the workplace wasn't functional. So I wish I probably had the confidence to identify that early, but you sort of go into this vortex of that particular
Mhm.
corporation. So, I mean, that was very much in my very early career, and I wish that I'd probably not doubted my gut instinct on things and actually kind of spoken up
Mm.
more in an appropriate way. But I think, when you're first starting your career, sorry, that's not true. I think when I started my career, the culture was a bit different. Like it was very much the hierarchy. You earned your stripes, you did what you were told. You didn't really have too much of an opinion about different things. Whereas now I love actually that the next generation coming in is actually much more confident with their opinions. And I think that's a really good thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit to where we are now. So the ACAM, so this has been, I mean, you mentioned it right at the beginning before we even jumped into this, like it's just totally sort of skyrocketed. You're doing all sorts at the moment. So why did you decide to co-found the Australian Centre for AI?
We talked about leaning
Mm.
into education. So early last year, I did a course for AI and marketing through RMIT.
Mhm.
And because I'm always about how do you lean into it. And we started doing some pilots at World Vision and just going more into that space because I realized that this was going to be a seismic change in the way that we work. And for me, and because I've also been involved in, a lot of industry seismic shifts, I could see the writing on the wall. So it was an area that I wanted to kind of delve into more. And I also think, especially around the ethical implementation, I think AI's got,
Yeah.
I could go on for a long time, but I think there's so much that it's going to unlock so much good, like what it's doing in medicine. I think it could democratize education. There's a whole heap of wonderful things that AI can do.
Mhm.
But then there is the risks. And I feel like there's not enough people kind of leaning into the space to actually help with putting up the right guardrails, but also understanding how it could be
Mm.
unlocked.
Mhm.
And so it was an area that I wanted to lean into. So I was already speaking about it at not-for-profit events and how could I lean into that. So then I started thinking about who in my network might be interested in
Yeah.
joining, and then I was so incredibly lucky because I've got such amazing co-founders that all bring very different skill sets. And yes, just seeing the support that we've got from the community is amazing.
That's awesome. It's so good. And I'm sure after this, there's going to be a lot of people reaching out to you. Can I find out more? And they're going to want to learn more, hopefully. And so, is it a case where, I guess now, as being, as you said, a founder of the Australian Centre for AI, are you sort of there as like that sort of body almost? Is that sort of to regulate and advise certain business?
No, we're not regulators. We're not doing kind of so much in the advocacy space. So it's a pro-purpose organization. So we're wanting to do benchmarking. We're wanting to offer free courses. We're wanting to help with guidance and share learnings. That's that part of it. And then at the moment, that's founder funded. But
Mhm.
longer term, we also have a consulting arm to it, which is more about education and change management and pilot programs and how do you actually make your marketing teams AI ready. And that will then help fund the activities for that side further. So we're looking at, scholarships and a
Yeah.
whole heap of different stuff. So our roadmap's very exciting. I'm very excited about where it's going to land. But no, advocacy around compliance and legislation isn't our bag. We might have thought leaders talking about that, but that's not kind of where we're landing.
No. Excellent.
And we're not a membership body as well.
Good. Good to know. Good to know. So, if you were giving advice to, let's say, I don't know, that sort of mid management level or, any marketers that are wanting to sort of, learn and grow, we know that AI is absolutely an area that you need to be focusing on, definitely, in terms of upskilling. Aside from AI, is there anything else you could think of that you'd say, you know what, I'd probably also recommend really starting to focus on these particular elements in marketing as well? Like, I've asked this question to a few people and I've been told, we need to bring brand back. We've been focusing too much on performance marketing, and I've had lots of different answers to this question. But, or would you say, honestly, AI, that's the number one right now?
No, I think what you're tapping into is the reason why everybody's come back to you with different answers is that marketing is being stretched into a lot of different directions. So as a result, if you kind of looked at it as a spider web or whatever, people's responses would be, I think there would be a filter of have they had got enough time themselves to focus on brand,
Mhm.
or do they have enough time to focus on data? I think marketing's become such a broad catch-all for a lot of different areas. I mean, I'm a big advocate of the sort of the filters of, how do you make sure that you've actually got well-rounded marketing skills? So I do like the, Mark Ritson style courses, which I've done. I do love, the marketing competency frameworks by AMI. I think that would probably be my big thing is there's a lot of change about to occur, but I would actually say keep going back to the basics and actually be real, really make sure you've grounded yourself in what best practice is in marketing. And then AI is a tool and it's going to change the way we work. And I think it's going to be probably the largest change I've seen in marketing. But I feel like as long as you've still also at the heart of what we're doing is marketing. And that's a big reason why I went into my current role is how do we remove all the admin, all the layers of stuff that we do as marketers at the moment, and how can we use AI to kind of break through some of that admin to actually get back to the purity of why we actually came in the first place?
Mm-hmm. And I think I've asked this question, as I said, to a few people, and it's people say, "Oh, we're going to have AI engineers and AI prompters and all these fabulous, wonderful titles." And I get asked a lot, you're starting to see JDs where it's we need AI, and I'm not personally, not at the moment. I know perhaps a few are, but I agree. I think it's going to be a really interesting time, very exciting time. But I think it's more about if you understand the platforms and understand how to use them. I don't see, like, I don't know, I could be completely wrong here, but I don't see lots of people all of a sudden not having jobs. Like, I think that's, there's still going to be an element of that, but I think it's like just leaning in, as you said, and actually being comfortable to use and work with some of these incredible platforms that are coming through.
Yeah, look, I mean, I could go into my futurist hat and give you sort of my perspective on that. The one thing I would say, and I was saying this at a event yesterday,
Mm,
it's a quite a segue, but when my son was diagnosed with autism, I felt like my world sort of capsized. And I think at that time I was thinking of 1,000 different scenarios of his future.
right.
And then my pediatrician said one thing that changed, which was 90 days. He said, all you need to think about, because all of those scenarios are probably wrong.
Hmm.
All you can focus is the next 90 days. So, how can you be the best mum you can be in the next 90 days? So, I could tell you what I predict is going to happen with marketing teams. Is that accurate? I think we'll get to a point where I think we'll have a pretty considered position about sort of a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, potentially what that team looks like. But for the listeners, I think the key thing is what can you do in the next 6 months, the next 90 days, and block it down. So how can you become AI ready? How can you do your
Yeah.
courses? How can you upskill? How do you stay relevant? How do you keep being curious? How do you learn? So I think that would be my biggest take of all of this is not to kind of jump at shadows because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we don't actually know where it's all going to land. And it could be far better, could be far worse, or it
Yeah.
could be actually not that much of an impact anyway. So just focus on what you can control right now.
Yeah. Love it. I want to jump on and just touch on personal branding and networking because you've done you've been a judge, you've been on, you've done so much. Like I saw you were very much also used to be well involved with the Australian Marketing Institute as well, a judge from Umbrella. How have you made a real proactive sort of, have you had to work hard to really tackle some of those networks and just sort of put yourself forward and attended events and really worked at that? Or has it come
Do you
from,
know what, actually, to be really honest, what happened was I wrote my book, which was a huge step out of my comfort zone. And I was asked by our agency to go and speak at their all staff event. And I was so nervous because even though I'd done a lot of speaking in my personal background from like in a corporate sense, this was me personally getting up. It sparked a year of yes.
yeah, wow.
So every opportunity I had, I said yes. And some of them made me sick to my stomach. I was like, I still don't want to get out there and do this. And what happened was the more I did it, the more confident I became in being able to do it. And not questioning myself, but actually being okay to put myself in those positions.
Uh-huh.
So that's one. Two is it actually looks like I'm very good at networking sometimes to people on the outside. I'm actually quite. This is going to sound funny after I say this, but I'm actually not that great at it because what happened years ago was as part of that year of yes and being open and saying yes, I kept meeting these amazing people,
Mm.
and I'm like, I'm so bad at keeping in contact. So, especially for my women's network, I actually decided to set up this CMO Inner Circle dinner series. And what I did is so there's only two rules:
Uh-huh.
no mean girls and no sales pitches. So that's it. It's all just about us supporting each other in a really authentic way. And we've made this amazing community, and I'm so proud of the network that we've built. But for me, it was an ability to actually go, okay, how do I keep in contact with all of these
Mm.
amazing people in a really meaningful way? And so the whole process is we have a sponsor that we sell tickets, and all those ticket sales, sorry, all the profit, when you offset it, goes to a women's based charity. So, and predominantly locally based. So, things like there was a First Nations one we did Dress for Success, which I love, couple of domestic violence,
Uh-huh.
women's refuges. So it's been a really lovely kind of mix. So not only is it a fantastic way for us to kind of connect and to keep that network, but also to know that we're doing this whilst actually raising money for women's based charities. It's been great. So that's been, so again, when I mentioned time blocking
Yeah.
and getting a structure around that, I kind of almost tried to put a structure around how do I keep these amazing networks going.
That's amazing. I did see that actually, and yeah, that's fantastic. And I love how there's an element there giving back to specific charities as well. I think that's fantastic. How many are in that network now, approximately? I can imagine it really.
There's probably about, because we sort of sell out of the dinners pretty quickly. So each dinner's around about 30 people. So we probably have about 50 CMOs.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. Fantastic. So, just final question from me here. I'm going to talk about, I guess, legacy and impact. So,
Yeah.
I know you've got still many more miles to go ahead, and Louise Cummings is not done yet. But what would you like to be remembered for? Like, if you were sort of asking, your team or your previous team would talk about anything there that's important for you.
I think my biggest wish is that, I mean, probably sounds a bit too aspirational, but I would like to think that the people I've supported, I've helped them make themselves a better version of who they were meant to be, especially in the work context. So I'm all about how do I actually support the people around me that are generally smarter and more talented. How do you replace me in those situations? So I would like to think that yes, their interaction with me would actually be for
Yeah.
the better. And in terms of legacy, it's a really interesting one. So when I was younger, I picked up my bags and moved to Cambodia, and worked for World Vision. And during that time, we were positively impacting through the microfinance program around 200,000 children's lives. And it was incredible. But I think legacy can be, you never know the butterfly effect. So you don't know if just helping that one person is going to have a dramatic
Hmm.
change versus something that seems really big at the time. I think it's just making those small decisions and small intentional decisions where you're hopefully creating a better footprint.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Yeah, well said indeed. Well, thank you, Louise. I feel like I could talk to you for about another 2 hours, to be honest. And
I
just
think I'd be very bored in that.
I wouldn't. But thank you so much for your
Thank
time. I know
you.
you're a busy lady at the moment, so I really appreciate it. And
Oh,
I
no,
think
I
our listeners.
appreciate you asking me to be part of this fantastic podcast.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Remember, the road to CMO isn't always linear. It's filled with challenges, decisions, and moments of transformation. Whether you're charting your course or navigating a career shift, the experiences, wisdom shared today, as with our guests, is invaluable. Thank you for joining us. Keep dreaming big, keep pushing boundaries, and remember that your journey towards becoming a CMO is as much about the destination as it is about the growth you experience along the way. Until next time, continue to innovate, evolve, and carve out your path to CMO.